I've been getting lots of questions lately on the current situation surrounding filming in national parks, sort of looking for a status update. As you may remember, if you've been a regular viewer of this channel, that there's been a lot of back and forth over the past several years over the ability of YouTubers and other social media content creators to legally be able to take video on federal lands, including not only national parks, but Forest Service land, BLM land, anything managed by the federal government, which is 29% of the United States. Right now, anyone filming anything for commercial purposes on federal land needs to apply for a permit to do so. But there's change in the air and a big workaround for you that I'm going to get to a little bit later. But first, this episode is sponsored by eTrailer.com. Let's be real, some people are just plain hard to buy for, but eTrailer's got you covered. At eTrailer, they know that the right gift can make someone's day, but figuring out what that is, well, that's the tricky part. That's why they've done the heavy lifting for you. They've handpicked their favorite products with one goal in mind, making your holiday shopping easier. They're not just any gifts, they're recommendations from their own team, enthusiastic experts who know trailers, towing, and outdoor gear like the back of their hand. Forget hunting for the perfect present or second guessing your choices. With their 12 days of deals, they'll deliver not just discounts, but the solutions to your gift giving headaches, because who needs more stress during the holidays? They're happy to help you get it done, find the perfect gift, and skip the hassle. Make the season merry, simple, and maybe even a little fun at eTrailer.com/gifts. Okay, you may remember back in April, I did a video rehashing the history of how we got here and the Explore Act that had passed the House of Representatives, which would rectify this situation. I'm not going to go into all the details, but a quick recap. The National Park Service says, quote, commercial filming means the film, electronic, magnetic, digital, or other recording of a moving image by a person, business, or other entity for a market audience with the intent of generating income. Examples include, but are not limited to, feature film, videography, and documentaries. Commercial filming may include the advertisement of a product or service or the use of actors, models, sets, or props. Federal law requires a permit for all commercial filming, no matter the size of the crew or the type of the equipment. This includes individuals or small groups that don't use much equipment but generate revenue by posting footage on websites such as YouTube and TikTok. Now, I don't know how you know if I'm going to be commercial or not. If I'm taking video on public lands, I might be using that commercially. I might not even know in advance, but that's besides the point. The law was written pre-YouTube, pre-smartphones, pre-digital cameras, pre this whole internet age, back when if you wanted to distribute commercial video, you were a TV station or a film studio or a news agency or something like that. You were not an individual person. But now anyone with a cell phone can make content for profit. And to the letter of the law, and I know some people in the actual government have argued this, simply the act of posting to YouTube or TikTok or Facebook is a commercial endeavor itself, even if you don't make any money off of it, because the platforms make money off of it. They run ads against it. It's commercial for them. In 2019, filmmaker Gordy Price was cited for shooting his small film on Park Service lands, and he sued the government. Now, his film was an actual film. He had a small crew, and perhaps we would like somebody like that to have a permit. But regardless, he sued the federal government, citing his freedom of expression, and he won his case, which essentially proved the federal government's commercial filming law unconstitutional, according to that judge's ruling. The judge said essentially that making laws related to the content of free speech is unconstitutional, meaning speech for money is not by itself a reason someone should have to pay a fee and get a permit. The federal government is free to set rules about equipment and staff and resource use, but saying that simply because the intent of the content was for profit was not good enough reason for restricting free speech. So when that ruling was handed down back in January of 2021, the National Park Service changed its rules to allow anyone filming with no more equipment than what they could carry at all times and no more than a single small tripod to set on the ground. But at the same time, they began the appeal process. And in 2022, in a 2-1 decision, the U.S. Court of Appeals DC Circuit reversed that ruling. The National Park Service immediately issued new rules requiring permits and specifically calling out social media content. And the process isn't as simple as going to a visitor center and paying a fee. It takes several weeks. You can get denied for lots of reasons, and it costs money. For most, more money than they'd ever make on a YouTube video. It's also applied in completely inconsistent ways all across federal land. Some parks say you don't need a permit. If you're doing the same stuff that other visitors do, just go ahead. Some want you to pay a ranger hourly to supervise and want a detailed plan of where and what times you'll be filming. The size of your group affects the fee. If you're a couple, you may not have to pay a daily fee at all. But if you have a family of 6, well, now you have a crew and have to pay more. The rules also treat photographers differently than filmmakers. You can shoot as many commercial photos as you want and make money off of them, as long as you aren't bringing in props and sets and models and generally disturbing what's going on in the park. But if you press the record button on your iPhone instead of the photo button on your iPhone, it's a different story. So, the Expanding Public Lands Outdoor Recreation Experiences Act, or the Explore Act, was introduced in the House by a Republican and a Democrat and had 51 co sponsors, 27 Democrats and 24 Republicans. And it passed the House on a voice vote, but it's since sat dead in the Senate waiting to be taken up. It establishes a new set of rules for commercial filmmaking and it essentially combines those rules with the rules for photographers. The Explore Act essentially establishes that the federal land agencies don't need to require authorization or a permit or assess a fee for filming or still photography activity that involves fewer than 6 people or is just merely incidental to or documenting an activity or event that is allowed already. So essentially, if you want to have a big group of people on public land, you already need to get a permit for that. It's not about the filming. You can't do anything that disturbs or negatively impacts the land. You'll only be able to film in areas where the public is allowed. But that act has not been passed by the Senate. It does a lot of other things too, like expand access to the great outdoors to veterans and people with disabilities. It adds national bike trails. It expands internet access in parks. It requires that land managers explore expanding seasons at campgrounds, a whole lot more stuff. And it's a revenue neutral bill. It's one of those weird, very popular bills that both Democrats and Republicans love. Even commercial businesses and environmental groups banded together to support this thing. It's possible it will get taken up during this lame duck session, but Congress has a lot to get to over this period, including a big defense bill. Still, some organizations are urging it get passed. On November 13th, spearheaded by the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, 312 businesses and organizations across the $1.1 trillion outdoor recreation economy called on Congress in a letter to pass the Explore Act before the end of the year, saying, quote, "The Explore Act would support rural economies, communities, and our American quality of life. It streamlines efficiencies and updates processes that are critical to 5 million American jobs and over half of all Americans who get outdoors. This bipartisan legislation would respond to the increased demand for access to the outdoors while also protecting public lands and waters for future use." There's no reason that this bill shouldn't get passed with all the support it has, except for the fact that this Congress is on track to become one of the least productive ever. But if you're a content creator and you're looking for a workaround for filming on public lands, you're in luck. Back in June, a nonprofit called the Blue Ribbon Coalition, which advocates for public access to outdoor recreation on public lands, secured a preliminary injunction stopping the federal government from enforcing the commercial filming permit and fee rules against the organization and its members. Quote, "The decision to grant this injunction is a victory for Blue Ribbon Coalition and its members. Government restrictions on speech need to be narrowly tailored and adjusted to keep up with the times, especially in the age of social media," said Ben Burr, executive director of the Blue Ribbon Coalition. "This ruling reinforces that the First Amendment protects our right to film and share our outdoor adventures without undue government interference. The preliminary injunction halts the enforcement of the commercial filming rules, while the case proceeds. There's a great long interview with Burr and others that I'll link to in the description that you should check out. But essentially, it sounds like this injunction is sort of in place, not just for this case to get worked out, but also to see what happens with the Senate and if this all moves anywhere. So, if you want to film on public lands, you can just sign up to be a member of the Blue Ribbon Coalition for $5 a month or $50 a year until the injunction is lifted. Now, really, the reason I hadn't heard about this injunction and the Blue Ribbon Coalition is they didn't really want to use this as a member recruitment tool, but it's there. And for $5 a month, again, $50 a year, you can join them and you can have free access to go film on public lands. Now, that does mean you're a supporter of this group and you might not agree with some of the things they fight for. They're big advocates for power sports like dirt biking and OHV riding on public lands. That's sort of where this all started. Their members would be riding a dirt bike on a designated dirt bike trail in a national forest with a GoPro on their helmet and get fined for it. They support protecting access to dispersed camping and not losing access to some areas for some environmental reasons. Maybe you don't agree with all of that. So look into them and make a decision on your own. But in the meantime, we're pretty much where we were before, unless you're a member of the Blue Ribbon Coalition. Except to say, I do think a lot of the Park Service areas in particular have settled down on requiring permits and will often say, if you ask, and you should ask, that you don't need one as long as you're just doing what the rest of the public does. I'd get that in writing, though, for sure. And if you want the Explore Act to pass, first maybe check out the video I did in April that goes deeper into the details, and then write your senator. That's where this fight is at this point. If you like what we do here, I'm doing a weekly newsletter I'm calling On Ramp. It's your way of getting quickly up to speed on the latest RV camping and national park news. It's a benefit for all of our mile marker members who support this channel and help provide the resources we need to cover stories like this one. It's $7 a month or $70 a year, but right now we're doing a free 1-month trial. You can find the link in the description or just head over to rvmiles.com/mile markers. Thanks for being here, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.